What's up you guys, Stoutmeister here, and once again we are talking about micro shit, because they just love getting spanked by every other console out there, especially Sony, considering the actions that Microsoft has taken to promote their next generation console, the Shitbox One. Now this video is going to be a video response to Blockbuster Critics' video on Steven Spielberg, who recently insulted video games. And for those that don't know who Steven Spielberg is, he's responsible for such films like E.T., Jaws, Terminal, and the list can go on from there. And more particularly with E.T., he caved into political correctness back in 2002 when he took 1982's E.T. and replaced the shotguns with walkie talkies in particular scenes. And he has since regretted that decision, but he's gonna have something else to regret later on in life with that little statement that he said about video games. Let's take a look at what Steven Spielberg and George Lucas had to say about video games. Lucas and Spielberg also spoke of vast differences between filmmaking and video games because the latter hadn't been able to tell stories and make consumers care about the characters. Basically, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg pretty much said that video games do not draw you in to care about the story or the characters in the story. There is no good story development in any video games. I am sorry, but you guys are dead wrong. Not only have there been a lot of video games with better stories than the majority of movies coming out nowadays, but you can control the story in video games. More notably with Legend of Zelda, with Assassin's Creed, which has one of the most complex storylines of this generation. You have Skyrim, where you can take on hundreds if not thousands of quests. More notably with Skyrim, you have several quests which can be their very own epic stories, like the main quest, where you have to kill Alduin, the main antagonist of the game. You have the story where you're going to the College of Winterhold, you discover this big artifact, the Eye of Magnus, and you have to get the Staff of Magnus to pretty much stop the Eye of Magnus from destroying Skyrim. You have downloadable content like Dawnguard and all other downloadable content that can be the equivalent of a main quest, among hundreds of other quests in the game. That is how epic Skyrim is. Not to mention the customization options in Skyrim, so obviously you get to create your own characters, your own race, in any way that you want. And you have the nerve to say that there's no story development, nor is there character development in video games. I am sorry, Steven Spielberg, but fuck you, and Sony, if you are watching this video and if you've heard of this story at all, you need to give a good spanking to Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, along with spanking microshit at the same time for their blasphemy among the gaming community. And if me talking about Skyrim like that isn't proof enough that there's story and character development in video games, here's a little personal experience I'd like to share with you. I was about 8-9 years old when I beat The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time for the very first time. I pretty much killed Ganondorf as Link, and we get to the ending of the game where Zelda's thanking Link, la-di-da-di-da. Link gives Zelda the ocarina back so Zelda can take him back to the original timeline, thus making two different timelines. We have the timeline before the events of the Master Sword being pulled, and then we have the events of after the Master Sword being pulled. And I remember crying like a little baby because I didn't want Link and Zelda to go. I wanted them to continue having adventures together or some shit like that. I was pretty fucking pissed. I was crying like a baby when that game ended. Not only for that reason, but because I had so much fun playing the game. In Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, that was one of the first 3D games on Nintendo 64 with so much story development and so much character development as Link. I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed going into the dungeons and temples as both Child Link and Adult Link, collecting the spiritual stones, collecting the medallions, and doing these other quests like getting Epona from Lon Lon Ranch and getting in jail and escaping from jail in Gerudo Fortress and freeing the carpenters, collecting the cuckoos for the cuckoo lady at Kakariko Village. You have the big side quest where you have to trade in all these items to get the big Goron sword, so on and so forth. There was so much story development in that game, especially for the time the game came out. And Majora's Mask? Nintendo took a big leap of faith with that game because before Ocarina of Time and all that, pretty much it's you being Link, you rescuing Zelda, and destroying Ganondorf, and collecting the Triforce, and all that other great stuff. With Majora's Mask, it was very different from the other Zeldas that came out. It was focusing on an entirely different landscape that was pretty much polar opposite of Hyrule. You have 3 days to do as much quests as you can and stop the Skull Kid wearing the Majora's Mask from destroying Termina. And there's just so much in that game. And it has a darker storyline along with it. And it has a lot of great quests. And I remember doing quests like the Anjun Cafe quest where you are going to Sakan's hideout and you're getting the Sun's mask back from his hideout. And you're uniting that Sun mask with Andrew's Moon mask and you're making the couple's mask. And that was such a touching story too. It talked about love and all that other great stuff. And I could go a little deeper into that game, but I don't want to spoil too much for it. If you haven't played Majora's Mask especially, you should check out that game for yourself and just be amazed by how great that game was, especially for the time it came out around 13 years ago. And with Ocarina of Time, that came out in '98, but even then, they remain timeless classics that must be played. Not to mention, Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time remains one of the most high-rated, if not the most high-rated video game of all time. So that should definitely say something about the game, Spielberg. But no, you're one of these types of people that when it comes to things like this, you want to take an opinion and state it as fact. It's one thing to prefer movies and television over video games, but to say that there's no story development in video games at all, generalizing the entire video game industry, that is a low move, even on your part. And the ironic thing about that is, you are taking Halo, which is a franchise that the developers love milking out, along with Call of Duty, taking Halo and making it into a television series for the Xbox One. How funny it's coming from a guy like you. And how very fitting for Microsoft to hire you to make the Halo television series, considering the fact that video games aren't even in the trunk of things to be concerned about when it comes to the Xbox One. Video games are pretty much becoming the night prom dumpster babies when it comes to things on what you should be concerned about when it comes to the Xbox One. The main concerns you guys are pretty much focusing on is television, sports, EA, NFL, Madden 2013, television, Call of Duty, television, racing, television. May I say more? Yeah, that's all I pretty much have to say on this whole issue right here. And before I end this video right here, I want to end it by saying a couple more things right here. But first, let's hear what Muggy has to say right here. Muggy says, shut the fuck up, Spielberg and Microsoft. Get your heads out of your asses. Stop being so goddamn greedy. Stop killing off the video gaming industry. And Sony. I think it's time for you to get together with Nintendo, gather up Microsoft, George Lucas, and Steven Spielberg, and give them a good swat, Catholic nun style. Now, cheers, motherfuckers. Today's Thirst Quencher is brought to you by Grape Amp. It is fucking awesome. That's all I gotta say about that. Stay tuned for more videos. Take care, see you later. Cue an epic outro music now.